Trains are on the move in Minnesota and Wisconsin every day. They carry thousands of tons of freight, grain, ore, and coal through our communities to ports along Lake Superior and to markets across the country. This is the story of the people who work on the railroad. Locomotives from the Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range Railway creep along the tracks at U.S. Steel's Mintac plant near Mountain Iron. The DM&IR is the largest ore-carrying railroad in North America. It's the primary ore carrier for 3 area iron mines, including this one, the single largest producer of taconite pellets in the United States.
We have 116 loads of Mintac taconite pellets. Each car is 70 ton worth of pellets. We have 2 units here, 6,000 horsepower. So it's a lot of weight that we're pulling for just 2 units.
When I come to a stop, I have to pull away real slowly to get all the knuckles stretched out tight before I pull real hard on it, otherwise I'll break them in 2.
Jim Norland's been with the DM&IR for 24 years as a carpenter, welder, and brakeman, and the last 10 years running trains between his hometown of Two Harbors and the mines of Minnesota's Iron Range. As a kid, Norland watched the steam-driven Malays working the same DM&IR run he's on today. Modern communication equipment and an on-board computer make the job a little easier.
If I have trouble, I can go into the event log and check to see what was wrong with the engine at that time, why the alarms were going off or something like that. It's kind of nice for us.
Another tool is embedded right in the tracks and gives him information about how the rest of the train is running.
Once all the engines and the cars go over it, it detects it if I have any brakes sticking or if I have anything dragging underneath. One of the cars might be off the tracks or something, I might be dragging it or something. And it'll let us know, and then we'll have to stop and check it out.
The tracks between Mintac and the dock at Two Harbors are covered by CTC, which stands for Centralized Traffic Control. It's a series of lights that signal the crew to proceed, slow down, or stop, depending on the situation.
They set up the lights for us and divert the traffic here and there if we have trains to meet or something like that. Or if they have welders or somebody out working on the tracks, they have to get them off of the tracks when we start to come towards it.
Lower crossing. Yes, we did. Lower crossing at Aurora. We just went by there. Over.
Conductor Lee Cordham handles the crew's radio communications and does the paperwork. Technically, he's considered the boss on board, but usually he and the engineer run the job together.
I have to be observant of anything on the track, be observant of our light system, our CTC. Shout out to the engineer, what lights are, what they mean. Also, we do switching at certain points. Start of our shift was in Two Harbors. We loaded 116 cars at Mintac on the east side, and then now we came up light, and now we're coming back loaded. And our destination is right where we started, back to Two Harbors. The travel time, depending on a few different factors, meets and our engines and if we have any slow orders, but it could be anywhere from 10 to 12 hours for a round trip.
Cordham is also a Two Harbors native. His dad owned a bait and tackle shop right next to DM&IR's main line into town.
Born and raised in the Two Harbors, lived there all my life, and then to hire out on the railroad has been kind of a dream come true for me. I guess I feel very fortunate, very lucky to be going through areas like this where you see so many different things, you know. You see lakes, you see rivers, you see Lake Superior when we come into Two Harbors.
Just coming out of a turnout there, and I had to keep her down to 20 miles an hour until my tail came out of that turnout. And the speed limit is 30 miles an hour down to Waldo, and then 22 from there on out. From Highland all the way to Two Harbors now, I'll be using nothing but brake, because I'm tipping over the hill right now. And when I switch on to this one, this is my dynamic brake, which is the engine brake. It changes the traction motors into generators and creates resistance on the wheels, and I can adjust it as much as I want here, up to 600 amps. I have several sets of brakes here I'll be using all the way into Two Harbors, because it's a fairly good grade. It's between 1% and 2% grade down to Waldo, and then it's upwards of 3% grade from Waldo into Two Harbors, which is considered mountain grade. And so the brakes will be pretty hot by the time we get to Two Harbors.
Inside a huge workshop at the DM&IR's main yard in Proctor, a crew of carmen work on a massive steel wheels and metal cars. They're fixing up 123 vintage rail cars to haul limestone up to the mines on the Iron Range. With a 4-year apprenticeship under his belt, Rick Griffin has a good understanding of the project and the process involved.
We're taking the cars and shortening them so they'll be able to, we can put the safety appliances on the end to meet the federal standards. Yeah, this is a really big job. Taking a lot of man hours to get it done, but we're gonna get it.
This rebuilding project is the department's biggest in 20 years. When the work is done, the car box will be 2 feet shorter to make room for a crossover platform on each end. The operation takes time and a lot of welding.
Well, right now what we're doing is, where we got all the structural cracks, we take and arc air these things out with the arc air, blow all the bad metal out, and then re-weld them so they'll hold up. As you can see, we got all the cracks are marked out in white chalk, and then I go through and blow them out. And then we re-weld them, and we do that through the whole car. Both sides of the car, we do it on the ends of the doors that were already cut off. Up here now is where you can see the crack and you blow it out. And on this side, I removed the whole weld there, and across the top, I blew the weld out. And now we'll go through and chip all the slag out of it, and then re-weld the cracks, and it'll be good to go.
At their peak, these carmen finished 5 cars a week. They rebuilt 123 cars in less than a year. It's a major accomplishment for the car department, and one these carmen are proud of.
Engine 46, the conductor, I'm ready to set him up. Setting up.
The crew of the Lake Superior and Mississippi Railroad is primed for another run. The all-volunteer operation offers scenic excursions along the St. Louis River in West Duluth. The LS&M coordinates its weekend excursions with the BNSF, whose trains still serve industries in the area.
First switch is line, second row. As you can see, the Burlington Northern track goes straight ahead. It goes up to Steelton Yard, which is part of the interstate line for the DWP, and we're taking the left one. We're going down onto the original trackage.
The tracks are remnants of the city's first rail line and follow the water's edge to Fond du Lac, one of the city's oldest neighborhoods. The line was in active service for 100 years, then donated to the city in the late 1970s. The engine and passenger cars are authentic as well.
What we have here is a General Electric center cab switcher. What's nice about this particular locomotive, it's very miserly on the fuel, and if we lose one half of the system, we can come home on the other half. So there are two separate engines, generators, and traction motor systems.
Operating on the LS&M is serious business. The crew is schooled in train handling and safety and covered by federal regulations.
Both Larry and I carry cards, either as a fireman or as a student engineer. We also do conductor training. I'd like to thank the BN for helping us with our training. They're very nice about it.
On a beautiful fall day, it's easy to be generous with compliments about the railroad, its crew, and the view.
And Duluth Road to Riverside, you will see a large bridge.
At the turnaround, passengers get a glimpse of the switch engine, making its way around to pull its cars back to town.
They're pretty, aren't they?
$7.59 ready to back up.
It's a working day on the Canadian Pacific Railway. In Superior, a handful of engineers, conductors, and switchmen are building the day's trains at CP's main terminal just off of Stinson Avenue.
What we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing this train here over to our yard in Duluth, and we're going to yard the train, and then the 7 o'clock switch engine over there will actually do the spotting at Cargill.
John Olson is one of CP's youngest engineers. In many ways, he's the future of the railway.
I got to make sure my wheels aren't slipping. You know, I'm using sand right now. That'll give us better adhesion because I'm at a higher throttle. Just watch my amperage and keep an eye on my mirror there, make sure nothing's going wrong back there. Pretty much gonna move like this, tease the ears and eyes.
Over the course of a couple of hours, John and conductor Don Adams build a train more than a mile long. This transfer train has over 100 cars, including a group of 50 hopper cars filled with North Dakota wheat. It's grain destined for the Cargill elevator in Duluth. A CP transfer crosses 8 city streets in Superior before it reaches the railroad bridge that connects the city to Duluth. At least 4 of those streets are major traffic arteries. CP crews approach every crossing with caution. Don keeps a watchful eye on everything.
Pedestrians, auto traffic, might be stuck on the track. Also look for any defects on curves. Plus we have to coordinate our moves with the Burlington, BNSF, Santa Fe Railroad.
Grassy Bike.
Yeah, we'll be following that UP, just coming over Hammond Avenue now.
Just coming over Hammond, following the UP. All right, thanks.
CP transfer out.
With a green light from the operator of BNSF's Grassy Point Drawbridge, CP's transfer train moves through Superior's Winter Street corridor. Just across Tower Avenue, the conductor makes a switch that puts his train in line with the drawbridge. For the crew, crossing the St. Louis Bay is a highlight of the trip. The CP Railway uses a mix of cars and engines from former CP subsidiaries. The Milwaukee Road and the Sioux Line are both part of CP's lineage. CP moves both grain and mixed freight through the Twin Ports. It also handles switching duties at a number of commercial interests, many of them based around the port of Duluth.
The 759 is coming by car,
Keep on out of coming. Give her a little stick.
throttle up. So you're using 1 track, then 2 track, then 3. The last one will go main 3.
By railroad standards, CP's Rice's Point Yard is tight quarters. Just 25 cars fit on each track. So to drop off its cars, the crew will do a little extra switching and maneuvering before returning to Superior.
Dispatcher, go ahead. Foreman Johnson, over.
It's a typically busy morning for Dave Harrison, a dispatcher with the Duluth, Winnipeg and Pacific. His tiny office is just a few feet from the tracks at DWP's Pokegama Yard in Superior. Surrounded by computers and communication equipment, Harrison controls all the trains coming and going along 162 miles of track, the DWP's main line between Superior and Rainier at the Canadian border.
This is an overview of what's happening out there. This is our north limit, it's Van Linn. And you can see I've got a train line from mileage 126 into Haley. And I've got another one, a northbound from Minorca Junction, which is just north of Virginia. They're gonna meet at Haley. Kind of just like the old 6th grade math problems. Train A leaves at this time and train B leaves, and where are they going to meet? You know, that's what you're doing. It takes a long time to learn, you know, how long it takes a train to get to each point and where to meet them. And, you know, I made a lot of bad meets when I first started, but the biggest thing is safety. At DWP dispatcher, go ahead, 2592 north, over.
What's the plan?
Northbound locals leaving Potlatch now, and we got a test train waiting for them at Haley. They'll be coming to Virginia to meet you. Over.
Yeah, okay, we'll probably cut the power off and run up and have coffee then.
Okay. Dispatch out.
Two-way radio communication keeps Harrison in touch with the trains and crews working along the DWP line. He also has a special piece of equipment which controls 7 miles of track in Virginia. The centralized traffic control system allows DM and IR trains to safely run across the DWP main to the Minorca mine.
I can run everything here. Like right now, there's this switch at Shelton. They cleared that switch. I just throw this lever and push the button, and now that switch is now moving itself back onto our main.
Harrison has been safely running trains for 8 years after working 2 years on a DWP track gang.
You know, you've got the phone ringing and 2 or 3 guys calling, and you know it gets stressful. You have to, you know, but you just kind of learn what's important and go to that one first, and you know, and then the phone is always secondary because, you know,
that's not a moving train.
Right. And out here you've got 2 trains running at each other at 50 miles an hour, so you know this is the most important thing is to make sure everybody's out there and everybody's safe.
Despite the stress of the dispatcher's job, he's happy keeping Duluth, Winnipeg, and Pacific trains on track.
It's kind of nice that we're a small outfit, so you know everybody that works here. You know, there's no, you know, well, I don't know who that guy is or whatever. I mean, I know everybody by their first name and where they live, and you know, just about. So it's kind of nice that way.
27 North, dispatcher.
Dispatcher, go ahead, 5427 over.
A unit train run by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway is on its way to Superior, Wisconsin with a load of low-sulfur coal. Its journey from Wyoming's Antelope Mine through St. Paul and north fits the BNSF's main mission to deliver maximum tonnage and maximum service with a minimum of equipment.
Our northbound line is a real tough line to run. It's undulating. It's up and down. There's no straight, you know, it's no straight track. It's all up and down around curves and stuff. So you're always pretty much doing something to maintain your speed. But yeah, it's a nice line to run as far as scenery, but you don't really get to enjoy too much of it. You're always whistling for crossings and watching for cars, and there's too much to do, you know.
The BNSF has 20 trains in motion between the coal fields of the Powder River Basin and the Midwest Energy Dock in Superior at any given time. The railway delivers more than 1,000 train loads each year. An average coal train has 113 cars and weighs more than 15,000 tons. Fully loaded, it takes 2.5 miles to bring it to a stop.
No train handles the same, but coal trains are different because they're so long. Like you said, they're heavy. So you got to start back a lot further than you normally do on a mixed freight. You can get away with starting a lot later sometimes. You know, with the coal loads though, you start back 2 miles almost always, just to make sure that you're going to be able to stop where you have to. It's different. It's a different job all the way around. You know, it's unlike driving a car. Everybody says, well, how hard can it be? You don't steer it. Well, steering is not the hard part. It's stopping, you know, and starting. Anybody can get one going, but it's, you know, stopping it once you get there. That's the hard part.
Engineer Gary Van Overmyren works mixed freight, coal, and taconite trains for the BNSF. He treats them all with respect, a habit he picked up in engineer school.
It's all nerve-wracking, you know, because now there's nobody sitting next to you to tell you, you know, you better do something a little bit faster, you better slow down a little bit more. Now it's all just you. So it's, you know, you're scared about the first 2 to 3 years. After you've done it a couple of times, it's like anything else. You do the same thing every time.
The tracks at Midwest Energy loop around the main facility, so a loaded train can be spotted while another one unloads. A trip around the circuit offers glimpses of the St. Louis Bay, the Duluth hillside, and wildlife too.
Yeah, this train will be pulled out and then we go on to the same track he's on. And we'll go around, there'll be another switch, one will veer off to the left, one will go to the right, we'll go to the left into the dumper. He'll take the right one and go up and come down the same way, go out the same way we just came down.
After inching into the plant's rotary car dump, the unloading process begins, and this crew is done. It's 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in October, and a Canadian National Duluth, Winnipeg, and Pacific train pulls into the depot at Rainier, Minnesota, just across the Canadian border. DWP is a subsidiary of Canadian National. Under agreements, PEG crews take over on the U.S. side of the border.
You taking this up?
Engineer Scott Meir and conductor Ron Willis are veterans of this run between the Canadian border and the DWP's Pokegama yard in Superior.
Today is Tuesday, so we go up on Monday, we go home on Tuesday, we got Wednesday off. Then we come up on Thursday, go back on Friday, have Saturday off. And we do that all month.
The DWP runs 4 or more trains a day over this 155-mile stretch of track, many of them freight trains on their way from Winnipeg to Chicago.
You gotta pull it by slow here because customs is checking the car numbers. Nice to have a lot of power to weight ratio. A rule of thumb around here is usually 1 horsepower per ton. And that's how it works out today. We've got 8,000 tons and we've got 8,000 horsepower. So these are the nicest locomotives that we have. It's called a whisper cab. You can actually talk in here instead of yell at each other. Yeah, you get spoiled by these. You ride, it's like riding in a Cadillac for a day, and then tomorrow we'll be riding in an old beat-up Volkswagen.
I like going through the towns too. You know, going through Cook, going through War. There's always people out there waiting and stuff like that. Yeah.
Most engineers with experience know the track well, no matter how many branches they run. That's the you have to know the geography to control the speed of the train, which is what the job entails.
I think my favorite spot would probably be just outside of Ericsburg on this end, before Ash Lake. There's a lot of winding track and a lot of maple trees and stuff that are, you know, as far as picturesque.
It's unusual to make a trip without seeing a lot of wildlife. Early spring and fall now, when the migratory birds are flying, you see a lot more eagles and different types of hawks and stuff. Another 35-mile-an-hour slow through here because of these curves. When this railroad was initially built, they didn't have engines this big and heavy, so it's real stressful on the curvature of the tracks, and they have a speed restriction.
it's the steepest grade on the railroad. But yeah, you descend from up on top of the hill all the way down to the river basin, the St. Louis River Basin, and yeah, it's pretty exciting.
As a major crossing between Minnesota and Wisconsin, the old Oliver Bridge has carried thousands of trains over the St. Louis River. On its lower level, cars often pass as heavy freight rumbles overhead. The bridge also marks the approach of DWP's Pokegama Yard.
With a loaded train, I would say on an average, I'll stop in 1.5 miles or maybe even a little bit more depending on the train. If I'm going downhill, obviously I have to start stopping a little sooner than if I'm going uphill. So.
That's it, we're done.
An amazing parade of maintenance equipment stretches out along a section of track near Carson. It's a track gang from the Duluth, Mesabi and Iron Range Railroad, replacing worn-out ties along the main line between Proctor and the Iron Range. The DM&IR's Maintenance of Way Department oversees more than 200 miles of track. At 500 ties per mile, the department keeps tabs on well over 100,000 ties, along with numerous railroad crossings, lights, and signals. Today, it's ties, and lots of them.
Well, your first two machines are your spike pullers. They pull the spikes.
The scrap part will be exciting.
Then comes your tie remover, takes your old tie out. Then you have a couple of guys picking the plates, throwing them to the side, tie plates off to the side. Then you have your anchor spreader. It moves your anchors away so the new tie can be installed. Then you have your scarifier that loosens the ground up so the new tie can be pushed in. Then you have your tie handler. One of them piles the old ties, scrap ties up, and the other one puts the new ones into the hole, and you have your tie inserter, pushes the tie in. Followed by a couple guys putting the plates back on the ties. Then you have your plater, which picks the rail up, and the two men slide the plates under the rail. Then you have your spiker, spikes it up. Then you have your rear machine, which is a rear anchor adjuster. It pushes the anchors back against the tie.
Modern track equipment is highly evolved, but machines can't do it all. The art of swinging a spike maul is not lost.
The machines don't spike joints. You do it by hand.
Bill Venny's worked on the railroad for more than 30 years. He's #1 on the Canadian Pacific Railway's seniority list and has his pick of jobs. He likes being a switchman at CP's Rice's Point Yard.
I started out switching, stayed with switching. Well, my father was on the railroad, and the guy I was working for was on a Sioux line, and they both suggested trying to get on, and eventually I got on, hired out. They had full crews then, and they had needed more people at that time, and it seemed a lot busier then than it is now, too. Clear on the first cross in Duluth. This is all switching mostly for the industries around here. They get the cars from Superior and they bring them over here. You switch them out and spot cars at different industries. The port, Ascon, 2 elevators. About 6 cars to the crossing, 7 to the switch. The Cargill, usually you put all the loads on 2 tracks up there, 3 and 4. And then when they have empties to load out, put them over on 1 track. And if there's some reason they don't, they notify you ahead of time. So. One car worth. You look 3-4 steps ahead. I had 4 tracks to switch out today, and I lined up the tracks before I started switching and had an idea of which cars I was going to put on which tracks so I can line them all up at once and then take them over to port. You always give them car lengths. Like if we start work, I'm going to say take them ahead 10 cars. And then I gotta say 5 cars half the distance. If I don't repeat 5 cars half the distance, he's supposed to stop. That'll do some good. I normally use hand signs. It's just easier and you've got your hands free actually, compared to holding on to the radio. You can switch your cars, lift your pins, you know, a lot easier that way actually. What makes a good switchman is a safe person that's always thinking safety. That's basically what the radio wants, and it's most of it's actually common sense. Go by the rules they have, and you shouldn't get in trouble. I enjoy it. It's been a good job, and as you get older and work here like I have 33 years, it's, you stick with the job. Even if I didn't like it, I'd stick with the job.
Track 105, October 28, 98 to engine 2 south at Fairlane.
Just outside the Eveleth Taconite Company's plant in Forbes, Terry Jans is doing paperwork. He's the conductor on a DM and IR ore train that's bringing a load of pellets down to Proctor.
This is track work. It gives us permission to run on the main line without worrying about other trains or track and equipment or anything else.
Jans has been working for the railroad more than 30 years, first as an engineer with the Sioux Line, and the last 10 as a conductor with the DM and IR. Running ore trains is just one of his assignments.
You can be in the yard, you can be up on the range in Keenan, hauling the crude ore. You could be on limestone trains that go to Mintac and dump limestone. So you get a little variety if you want. It's long hours. A lot of these jobs are 7 days a week, so you put a lot of time in. Away from home a lot, but it's a good job. Railroading is, you got to have it in your blood, I think.
Ore trains like this one stretch out more than a mile as they snake through northern Minnesota's forests and farmland. This one is 164 cars long. Each rail car holds more than 70 tons of taconite. If all goes well, The crew will make the 50-mile trip between Forbes and Proctor in less than 3 hours.
Uphill slow, downhill fast. Just gotta try to keep your speed of your train as even as you can the whole way. So that's what you plan on.
Alan Carlson is the engineer on this run. He went to engineer school 2 years ago, after working a couple of years as a brakeman. He grew up in Proctor, watching DM and IR locomotives roll through town. Now he works a floating schedule on a number of the DM and IR's regular routes.
Some guys just work in Proctor, some guys just work in Two Harbors, and some guys just work up in Keenan. I'm on the export. I go all over the place all the time, so you pretty much know most of the jobs.
Wander here, or do you wander up at the yard? Oh, we're just gonna pull in the yard, set over it. Yeah, just pump the yard up. So bring her there. This upper yard that you're looking at right now is a receiving yard where pellet trains from Mintac, Minorca, and FTAC come into and are yarded. And they sit here until a switch job takes them down to the docks to unload them. We're heading straight in. Gonna go home in about half an hour.
The main line of the Wisconsin Central Railway in Superior is getting special attention. A group of welders is on site to finish up work on a brand new switch coming out of the yard. Through a process called thermite welding, they are connecting sections of track to form a continuous rail.
In this welding, you're actually pouring steel into a mold instead of using an electrode or wire. The reason you do that is because of you're filling in a gap that's an inch wide, and you need a lot of heat, to fuse the two pieces of steel together is what you're doing, just melting the two pieces together, basically.
Welders start by cutting a standard 1-inch gap at the joint and then adjust the rail for the weld.
Then you take your wedges and drive them underneath the plates to get your peak on the rail, about 50 to 80 thousandths peak with a 3-foot straight edge. While you're peaking it, you also do your alignment, make sure that the alignment is right and there's no twists in the rail. And once you've got the alignment right and the twists out and the peak right, then you're ready to start putting your molds on. Basically, you rub them together to try to get them to fit, the rail. And once you get those on there and get them straight and get them so they're on there right, you pack sand all the way around it. There's a seam all the way around it, and it's called luting sand. It's just like beach sand with bentonite in it. It makes it sticky. Pack that all the way around, and then you go through a process of preheating for about 5 minutes. Right here are the little steel pellets that actually make up the weld.
Tim Welch and Jim Mabey do the job with practiced hands. They've worked as a team for over 2 years and do most of the track welding done in the railway's Northwest Territory.
You probably saw me looking in there. You really got to watch that, because if you start melting rail, you can create slag pockets in there and you'll make a bad weld. And so you got to control the heat by turning the propane up and down a little bit to control your heat a little.
Once the rail is up to temperature, it's showtime.
After your preheating is done, you light it's like a sparkler. It's, an igniter. Stick it in there, pull the pot over, and the thing, does its shaking and rattling and spewing. And it takes about 15 seconds, to get up to probably 4,000, 4,500 degrees. Once it gets hot enough, that thimble melts and it pours out steel into the mold. It hits a diverting plug that forces it to the outside so it doesn't rush to the bottom. Goes around the diverting plug and out of the risers in the slag pans.
4 minutes later, they can start taking the mold apart and preparing the rail for train traffic. The clock's always ticking for this crew, especially when they're working on a main switch like this one. They know that there are trains waiting to roll as soon as they're cleared.
And something like this, you gotta have at least an hour. At least an hour. And, if you gotta move a lot, it's hard. The main goal is for the railroad to run trains. And at the same time, we have to get our work done, and it's a little bit of a conflict, and you just have to work with each other the best you can.
Once the weld gets down to 400 degrees, they do a rough grind to smooth the joint, followed by a finish grind. The final product is a slightly crested joint.
Ideally, you want it level across the weld with a little bit of peak yet, and then that drops down to basically level. If you grind it level, it'll probably be low in the morning. So you want a little peak on there. I'm signing my name, the weld number, rail temperature to the weld. Same information will go on my welding report then. Goes in the office.
Here they repeat the process 28 times at every joint in the switch. Ultimately, it makes stronger and safer tracks, and that's the point.
To run trains, the structure has to be good, and it takes people like us, welders, section men, everybody, to keep the track the way it needs to be so they can run trains.
Horsepower to South Itasca over.
See South Itasca over.
64 ready to pull Scott over.
Straight up the main out of town.
Up the main on a departure, roger.
Afternoon, Al. You say you're on the main?
That's correct.
Conductor Al Danishevsky and engineer John Woyak make up Local 64. It's one of the Wisconsin Central's daily freight runs between Superior and Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Today's work includes stops at Gordon and Hayward Junction.
Today, starting out of Superior, we're just a little bit smaller than usual. An average train would be about 25 to 30 cars. And then with our pickups en route, we can get to about 100 cars when we arrive at Stevens Point.
It's an uphill climb from the yard at South Itasca to the brim of the Lake Superior Basin. The grade is fairly steep, 1.1%. John Woyak has 25 years of experience on the railroad. He says the keys to his success are an understanding family and the ability to focus on the job at hand.
If you're going to do really well at it, you have to pretty much put everything into it. It's that tough out here. You have to abide by every rule and regulation. One mental vacation and you've got problems.
First Form B is at 447.3 L.
You have to continually work back and forth. He clears up the Form Bs, talks to the foreman in charge and all that. And that leaves me to concentrate on running the train properly. And it's a back and forth thing in the cab all day long.
The Wisconsin Central is a young railroad. It was formed in 1987 with tracks formerly owned by the Sioux Line and others. It's now the largest railroad in the state of Wisconsin. At Hawthorne, the company added a new siding. It gives non-stop freight runs a place to pass without getting caught behind slower-moving traffic.
If you get a local out in front of a road job, well, the road job knows what he's in for. He's going to watch us switch a bit, but that's where the dispatchers and network control comes into play, and they try to avoid all that congestion and make sure that we follow the fleet. Dispatcher at Stevens Point plays a big role in it and has a lot to do with it. And a bad decision on his part can send the whole system tumbling. Train crews have only 12 hours to make it from point A to point B, and if he doesn't do his part, we're dead on our hours, and that's the term that's used. And the first time you hear it, you really got to wonder what that's all about.
At Gordon, Local 64 picks up 5 carloads of used ties.
On this job, on 63 and 64, there's always work to do. So I would rather get out and do a little bit of work. If I had none, I'd rather do a little bit. If you're going to get a lot, you get a lot. That's all there is to it. It just goes with the job. Right now I'm doing the safety and appliance inspection on it. When we get it back on the train, I'll do the air test on it.
Here again, communication between conductor and engineer is crucial.
We have to have an understanding when we're doing our job, what he's going to do and what I'm going to be doing. And seeing I'll be outside, I got to let him know even ahead of time what's going to happen. 64. Track 365, October 19, 1998, 7496 East at milepost 414. Check line 1, track warrant number 354 is void. Check line 2, proceed from milepost 414.0 to Bigfoot on the main track.
Crews have a chance to rebid their work assignments every 4 months. They can change partners or change routes based on seniority. This is the run of choice for a crew that likes the outdoors.
This is the North Country for sure, and it's peaceful up here. And then as you move further south in the state, it gets to be more hectic. And you get all the way down to the Fox River Valley, it tends to really be hectic down there.
Down the track, the crew does more switching work. This time picking up 20 cars and an engine at Hayward Junction.
Start doing it and are successful at it, you tend to like it. Here I am.
It's 8 a.m. on a sub-zero December morning, and Dennis McKay is setting up his specially equipped truck to ride the rails. McKay is a track inspector for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, and he's starting his run this day just outside the BNSF main yard in Superior.
Dispatcher, this is Track Inspector McKay. How does it look to get tracking time on the number 1 main, starting at the westbound control signal 54th Street, and then I'd like to work my way up to 15.9, over.
Hey, from McKay, tracking time authority, 75,575. Granted on main 1, ONE track.
With the dispatcher's okay, McKay drops the truck into gear and begins a hands-free run down BNSF's main route in Superior. He's on the lookout for any problems on this heavily traveled stretch of track.
Well, we're governed by federal guidelines as to what the standards for the railroad must be, and those are the minimum standards which we have to abide by. Actually, the railroad maintains the track above what the government requires, and my job is to make sure that the track conforms to those standards. They jokingly always say about, track inspectors wouldn't find anything unless they fell in it, if there's a break, especially in cold weather, if there's a break, the rail's gonna pull apart, and you'll feel the bump. But you're looking for telltale signs on the top of the rail. Well, if there's something that you find, in your inspection, you take the proper remedial action, which would be a slow order or take it out of service and then repair it right then and there.
On this double-tracked stretch of the BNSF main line, regulations require that McKay stop his truck, get out, and wait a safe distance away whenever a train passes. Empty taconite cars rush past, traveling about 40 miles an hour. That's a speed that doesn't sound very fast until you experience it up close and in person.
It's quite a chill factor, doesn't it? At first, I didn't know that I was going to stay with the railroad. I was going to school at the time. But then as I started to like the railroad more and more. Dispatcher, this is McKay at Boylston. How does it look to continue up to 15.9?
The switch is outlined for your route there at Boylston on main 1, over.
All right, may I have permission to hand operate it? Proceed, over.
Permission to hand operate the switch there at Boylston for your route, over.
Thank you, dispatcher. Yeah, I like working outside. I couldn't stand being pent up inside of a building all day long. Maybe working in just a small pod. Also in my job, because I'm not confined to one localized area, I go to Duluth, I go to Superior, I go to Eloise. So I see different scenery every day.
A Union Pacific transfer train makes its way out of the Itasca yard in Superior with David Van Landshut in the driver's seat. He's got 32 years invested in railroading, 27 of them working as an engineer. Today's mission is to exchange rail cars with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Canadian Pacific Railways.
We're going to go right to Duluth. Right to Duluth, cross your swing bridge that you always wanted to see, and to the BN Racing Point Yard. Set out there first, and set up CPRS.
The UP uses the former Chicago and Northwestern route through Superior, including a long, narrow bridge over the Nemadji River and neighboring marshlands. The journey also crosses a set of railroad tracks owned by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
It's like the four-way stop sign on the highway.
After rolling through a stretch of open grassland, Union Pacific trains move into the residential neighborhoods of Superior's East End. The pace is a steady 10 miles an hour. Through the course of the day's work, Van Landshut runs his engine over tracks owned by 3 different railroads. Coordinating and timing their shared use is sometimes tricky.
You must communicate, of course, with the controller of the Grassy Point draw. He lets you across first, and the yardmaster controls you from the draw to Rice's Point. You then go to the Sioux line. The Sioux line controls us. It's not easy not being your own boss. I'm working here because I like doing it. Most people, I think, do like it. My advice to anyone who doesn't like what they're doing is find another job. It's a terrible thing to come to work and not enjoy it. This is fun. UP transfer, calling the yardmaster. Can you set Rice's Point over?
Rice's Point over.
We're coming down 21st West. We have the head 7 cars are for you.
7 cars, you can push them into 503.
503, Roger, thank you. It's a flip of the coin if they're going to be on the head end or the hind end, and how many you have and how you do this, because sometimes you pull by and shove in, sometimes you head in, depending on how much room they have and what's going on over here.
In BNSF's Rice's Point Yard, Peter Salnick is prepared. He's a footboard yardmaster for the UP, regularly picks up switching duties along with his work in the yard office in Superior. His experience shows as he directs his engineer with an economy of words and gestures.
One UP. That'll do, UP.
The next stop is the CP rail yard on Rice's Point. It's a short run that briefly puts the UP train under the authority of the Canadian Pacific.
We're going to cut off the 4 cars with the Sula, and they're going to pick them up and get rid of them.
Jimmy changed what's the line for it in the port. That's good.
And we're going to go back to the BN yard and pick up 24 cars here that Pete had a list for, and then go back to Itasca.
Anybody around
It sounds
there
smooth, but it's going to take us some time.
With its deliveries done, the crew returns to the BN yard, where Salnick lines up the switches once again. He's hooking up carloads of barley headed for a brewery in the Twin Cities. As he works, he's conscious of being on another road's property.
You don't do what you're told over there. You don't just go where you please. They tell you what track to go on, what track to go. That BN yard in Superior, they don't always give you a track to come back. You got to find one, but if there's some place you're not supposed to be on, they'll tell you that. Don't go down that track. Sometimes they give you a track to come back, but they all come out on the other end, so whatever one you find is fine. But usually they tell you where you're going to go and where you're not going to go pretty much. It's nice to walk around on a nice day. It is nice to be out. When it's raining, it's probably the worst. Of course, when you're walking through 3 feet of snow, that's not so much fun either.
The crew returns to Superior on the BNSF's West Runner, taking in the scenery along the way.
Well, as you can see, I'm enjoying the wildlife. There are deer, bears, ducks, geese, rabbits, squirrels, and people to watch. It's just a fun thing to do.
This was kind of a quick shot. I'll be over there, and we can only work 12 hours. I've gone to Duluth and back, didn't make it back in 12 hours. I've left the engines over there. They send an extra job over to relieve us or something like that, but this was a pretty quick trip today.
You have to watch this old retired gentleman here on the left. He owns this house. He's always out in his yard, and if he's out there, I have to give him a highball. He likes to wave to us. Well, it's a spectacular thing. It's something that everyone should be able to come across on an engine or a train to see it. I know there are excursion trains on occasion. If someone has an opportunity to ride a train and see what we see, I really recommend it.
A plume of thick black smoke billows from old number 14 as it sits outside the depot in Two Harbors. It's a classic steam engine operated by the North Shore Scenic Railroad. It takes plenty of effort by the North Shore crew to keep old number 14 oiled, lubed, and fired up for runs between Duluth and Two Harbors, but it's worth the effort. Iron horses like this one have kept America's love affair with trains burning for more than a century.
Good, we got a good head of steam.
The North Shore Scenic Railroad's main line between Two Harbors and Duluth was purchased from the DM&IR Railway. Today, the track is owned by the St. Louis and Lake County Regional Rail Authority, which saved the track from being abandoned. Engine number 14 is part of the collection at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in Duluth. In 1993, she starred in the Disney movie Iron Will. The 90-ton locomotive was state-of-the-art in the early part of the 20th century.
This engine was made in 1913. It's a Baldwin. And it first worked up here on the logging railroad.
The fireman works to keep his balance in the cab as he stokes the firebox to keep up a good head of steam. And the engineer has a daunting job, controlling a multitude of levers and valves that speed up and slow down the locomotive.
This is the throttle lever. This is the brake for the train brake. And this is the independent for the engine brake.
Despite the complexity of the engine and the plain old hard work of running it, this is a labor of love for the men who work on old number 14.
Wow, this is a lot of fun. We all volunteer. If you work on the equipment, then you get to run it also.
One of the DM&IR's best known and most scenic runs begins here in the Proctor Rail Yard. Every day, carloads of pellets from 3 different Iron Range taconite plants are gathered in the yard and hauled down the hill to Dock 6.
Engine 414 flowing 4 north, NORTH. And Proctor, Bureau CTOR, check line 2, TWO, proceed from milepost 10, 1 knot to Carson's VRSON on southward SO18 WRD track.
We're basically a yard job. All our duties are is to deliver the pellets that the road crews bring to Proctor. We deliver them to the docks for unloading, and we bring the empties back to Proctor.
The number of engines used for the job depends on the weight of the train and the grade of the route. 3 and sometimes 4 engines make the trip from Proctor to the dock. The engines haul the load on level ground and help with braking on the downhill. The 10-mile run takes less than an hour. At the Spirit Mountain Curve, the wooded rail corridor gives way to panoramic views of the St. Louis River and Lake Superior. The 2.2% grade is among the steepest in the world, and it keeps the crew on their toes.
This is a pretty typical run. We make this 3 times a day. With, I think this one was 140 cars to the Proctor to the yard docks. It was pretty uneventful, which is the way we like it.
A crew of 3 is responsible for delivering cars to the dock: an engineer, a conductor, and a brakeman. Each of them brings skill and experience to the job.
I've been employed by the DMNIR for 25 years. I've been in engine service since 1979. Hired out as a brakeman in 1973, and the opportunity went to become an engineer, and so I decided to do it. Yeah, I like being a locomotive engineer. It has its moments. The weather conditions make the job a little bit more difficult, but on the whole, it's a challenging job.
The round trip to the dock and back to Proctor is routine for this crew, and the scenery can't be beat.